Welcome back to another video. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. So this is a transfer special. I've got the transfer guru with me, Jamie Brown from the Daily Hotspur. Do check out the Daily Hotspur on Twitter. Jamie, how are you? Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too, Chris, and all the viewers. Yeah, really looking forward to this show. I think it's going to be quite an interesting month for Spurs. I'm sure as we'll touch on, I think there's lots that, there's certainly bits that we do need to do, and I hope we do in terms of both incomings and outgoings. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this show.
Well, we're certainly going to look at the players that could possibly go out the door at Tottenham and, of course, the ones that could come in this January transfer window. Jamie, I wanted to start the show off by saying that Jose Mourinho a couple of days ago said in their press conference, I'm not expecting transfers. No, if something good happens to us, it would be a big surprise to me. Is Jose Mourinho playing it down? Will Tottenham be making some signings this January?
Yeah, look, I think we've seen in the past that Jose Mourinho is a guy who does play with the media. He knows how to kind of use it, and I'm sure there might be a bit of playing with it in terms of not putting the pressure on Daniel Levy to go and deliver. I think if he was to come out and say, I need this, I need a new central midfielder, I need a new centre back, then he'd be putting a lot of pressure on Daniel Levy to go and deliver. And then, of course, clubs that we're trying to buy from, or maybe we're interested in their players, they'll know that maybe we are desperate for new players. So I think that maybe he is being smart. I do think there is a bit of he is being realistic as well, because I think that, as we know, January is a very difficult window to go and get new players in, and obviously with the the current financial climate in terms of football, and we don't know what's going to happen in terms of when fans are coming back. So there's a lot of uncertainty in football. So I think there's also the case that maybe Spurs aren't looking to spend money this month. I think maybe a net spends. I don't think we'll see we won't see that Spurs. I think it will be heavily reliant on getting players out the door. So I think there's definitely a bit of playing, but I think he's also kind of been realistic as well.
Jamie, in the last transfer window, of course, Spurs signed quite a few players. Who have you been most impressed with?
I mean, the one for me, I think, has got to be Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I was really excited, actually, to get him. I think he was kind of an underrated signing just because he came from Southampton, and people had obviously seen him play in the Premier League and maybe question what he could bring to the team. But I think he was kind of the perfect Jose Mourinho sort of player. I think he is like he's pretty much like Jose Mourinho on the football pitch. He's a leader. He wants to give everything for the team. And, since the Everton game, he's pretty much dropped an 8 out of 10 each week, if not more. So he's certainly, for me, been one of the best signings for Spurs, if not the best signing in the Premier League. So he's just added so much to our midfield. It was a position that we've been missing for a couple of years as well. I think you look at the likes of Winks and Sissoko was the partnership in the middle for a couple of years, even in the Champions League final. But so to bring in someone like Højbjerg was really needed, and he's been fantastic this season for Spurs.
Jamie, he really has set the standard now for Tottenham. When he doesn't play, and in my opinion, a player like Harry Kane or Heung-min Son, when they're out of the team, you really notice it. When Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is going to be out of the team, either through injury or suspension or whatever, who's going to fill that gap for Tottenham, or is that an area that Jose Mourinho does look to bring another player in?
Well, for me, for sure, I think that's it's a very good point. I think that there is definitely a need for a new central defensive midfielder. I think if you look at the number of games he's played as well, he's played a lot of football already. So yes, he's probably a guy that probably will play a lot of minutes for Spurs and is capable of doing that. But I think there will be times when he will need to be rested. You don't want him playing. Spurs, I think we've already played like 30 games. We've played a lot of football this season already. So there is definitely a need to go and rest him. And you look at the squad, and there isn't really anyone in that squad who you feel could do the same role as him. I think one player that Spurs do actually own is Oliver Skipp, but of course he's out on loan. And there may be question marks over whether he's ready to come in and play at that sort of level just yet. I think he's an absolute exceptional young talent, but he's probably not ready yet. But so I think that's maybe an area, as maybe we'll touch on in a minute, definitely an area for me that Spurs need to go and look at, because Højbjerg is going to play a lot of football this year, and he does need to be rested at times.
Very impressive and a great signing for Tottenham. Now, let's go on to the players that could possibly leave the club in this January transfer window. One player that keeps being mentioned week after week after week, particularly now Mauricio Pochettino has taken over at Paris Saint-Germain, and that is midfielder Dele Alli. Do you see him going out the door this January?
I think he'll stay. I think he will stay at Spurs this January. I think that a permanent move is going to be very difficult, again, because of the financial climate. And I think Spurs will want a lot of money for Dele Alli, and I don't think they'll get that. I think there would have to be a real substantial offer on the table from maybe a Paris Saint-Germain. I don't know whether they're capable of offering that at this moment in time. So I can't see us doing a permanent deal and then a loan deal. I don't think Spurs will look at it in terms of giving Ali a chance to go and play football and maybe get back up to the levels that we hoped he would. I think they'll see it as they're just giving away an option. You know, Spurs, we've already lost Giovanni Lo Celso to injury. We're obviously slightly light in terms of midfielders who can contribute to goals. So I think just a loan option. And as I mentioned, we've got so many games this year, so you don't want to lose an option just by loaning him out. So I don't see a loan move or a permanent move for Dele Alli, and I actually think he will stay at Tottenham this season.
Do you think Jose Mourinho will give him many chances, though, Jamie? Because, you know, a player like Dele Alli, who has been fantastic for Spurs, you know, in recent years, you know, ever since he signed from MK Dons, he needs to be playing football, doesn't he?
Well, I think this is the argument, really. I mean, there's obviously Jose Mourinho doesn't particularly fancy him, and I think that he'd be happy to move him on. I think the club, though, I think they are desperate for Dele Alli to stay and kind of get back to the levels. So, you know, the club have got a very difficult decision to make. Do they maybe go and bow into the manager's demands in terms of maybe getting him out the door and finding a new player to come in and fill that role, or do they actually stick by him? And hope that maybe he might potentially outstay Jose Mourinho, and then we've still got Dele Alli. I think they still definitely believe in him. So yeah, for me, I think that Dele Alli, as I said, will remain at Spurs, and I think Jose Mourinho will have to give him opportunities. As I said, I keep saying there are so many games this year, and Dele Alli will have to be used, whether Jose Mourinho I think likes it or not. I think he will have to use him.
It's funny though, Jamie. We're now in January, and you think that, you know, is Dele Alli going to get his chance? You know, he's playing 3-4, you know, 5-10 minutes at a time. You know, he comes on, he seems to, you know, be knuckling down. He doesn't seem to be sulking. He seems to just get on with, you know, the minutes that he's playing. So it'll be very interesting to see whether he gets his chance. Now, another player, Harry Winks. You know, I keep reading reports. You know, at the start of the season or last year, Manchester City were meant to be interested in buying Harry Winks. Of recent times, I've seen reports, Everton, you know, about a loan move in January. Valencia, you know, in the last couple of days have been mentioned now about they want to sign Harry Winks on a loan deal. Do you see Harry Winks going out the door?
Do you know what? In the last couple of games, I think that he has seemed to turn a corner under Jose Mourinho. I remember in one of the Europa League games, he was kind of hauled off quite early in the match. I think it was just after the second half had started, and he walked down the tunnel and people were saying, well, that's it for Harry Winks. But he really seems to have turned it around. I think he had a fantastic performance against Leeds, and he does seem to maybe have turned a corner. And of course, you know, we saw with Ndombele, you know, there is a way back under this manager. So I think Harry Winks has done that. And so, again, it's another option for Spurs. And if he can keep performing like he did against Leeds, then I think we've got a very good option there. I think he's a guy who works hard in midfield. Obviously, he can be creative at times. I think we haven't seen that enough from him recently. But I think against Leeds, we saw. I think he played the ball to Bergwijn to win the penalty. So there's definitely signs that he can be a very good player. And of course, he is still young. I think people do forget that as well. He's only 24. So, you know, that is still relatively young for a player, and he's got lots of time to develop. So, I do really like Harry Winks. He's one of our own. I think that is really important to have around the club. I think so many years we've had players who don't really seem to care about the club, but Harry Winks does. And I think we just need to stick by him. And he looks like he's reaching quite a good level at the moment for Spurs now.
Jamie, I completely agree with you. From a Tottenham fan's point of view, you know, you want to see players like Harry Winks and Dele Alli. You want to see it work out for them. But from a personal point of view, the Euros are coming up. You know, 6 months' time, the Euros are coming up, and they need to be playing first-team football. So, you know, surely both of those players are going to be, you know, looking at their options and thinking, I need to be playing first-team football in order for Gareth Southgate to be putting me in that squad.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point, and maybe they will. Both of them might try and push for moves. I think Dele Alli's kind of his group that he's working with will try to push for a move, because I can't see him getting a huge amount of opportunities under Jose Mourinho. Maybe for Winks, of course, we did see him start in the Premier League, so maybe there are going to be more opportunities for him. But just on Dele Alli, I do think that is a good point. I think we could maybe see Dele Alli really try to push away for a move, because he's going to want to be part of that Euros team, as you said. So maybe that could play a factor in Dele Alli leaving potentially.
Maurizio Pochettino coming in.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a factor, and I think that we'll obviously might touch on a couple more players in terms of will they go to PSG, but I think you will see a lot of players kind of linked with PSG now, Spurs players with Maurizio Pochettino taking that job. So that obviously will definitely be a factor, and of course they were linked before. So it's definitely I think there's a slight possibility that it might happen, but I do think Dele Alli will stay at Spurs this month.
Jamie, just quickly, now I've mentioned Maurizio Pochettino. How did you feel the other day when you saw him lift that PSG shirt?
Oh, it's really weird because I was totally behind him right until the very end. I think the memories that he kind of created at Spurs were incredible. As a growing up, I was always bullied by Arsenal fans at how where Spurs were in terms of playing Channel 5 in the Europa League. But he took us to the Champions League final, and the levels that he's taken us to, I will forever be grateful for that. But I think I do need to make the point. Jose Mourinho is our manager now. I'm very happy with Jose Mourinho, and I'm fully behind Jose Mourinho. But yeah, I wish the best of luck to Pochettino at PSG.
Jamie, one other Tottenham player, Davinson Sanchez. Very limited opportunities this season. Can you see him going out the door in this January transfer window?
I think because of the financial situation, I think Spurs will want too much money, but he's been very disappointing actually for me. I mean, we signed him for £45 million and he had that first good debut season, but he's never really kicked on. And he's a guy who has a lot of potential, but he's got a lot of mistakes in him still. And that is very frustrating. I think when we see him play, there's always, you do worry. So I think Jose Mourinho sees the same as well. And that's why he's had very limited opportunities. Jose Mourinho wants players that he can totally trust in the team, and Davinson Sanchez just isn't one. And it's a real shame because, as I said, he looked so good in that first year, and obviously his time at Ajax was a very promising player, but he's just not really settled in at Spurs. And for me, I think it's time to kind of move him on. I think at that sort of money, you need to be looking to maybe go and reinvest, especially in central defence, an area where maybe we do need to go and strengthen. So I don't see it happening this month just because of the money situation, but I think in the summer I can definitely see something happening in terms of Davinson Sanchez leaving on a permanent deal then.
What about goalkeeper Paulo Gazzaniga? Because, of course, in the summer, Jose Mourinho brought in Joe Hart, raised a few eyebrows, but he's a real leader, on and off the pitch. But Paulo Gazzaniga hasn't had any opportunities at all.
No, I mean, look, his future was completely linked to Maurizio Pochettino. I think they both came from the same town in Argentina, so I think that's kind of why Paulo Gazzaniga is at Spurs, because Maurizio Pochettino was there. But look, Joe Hart, I think he's coming in. He's done okay. Obviously, he's had a lot of mistakes. I think he's had a lot of mistakes. I think that's harsh. He's made some mistakes, but for me, I think you need to. I'd much rather have a homegrown keeper as our backup. I think it's such a waste of a non-homegrown slot in the squad to have someone like Gazzaniga. So, and he just, for me, I don't particularly rate him. So he's certainly a guy that we need to move on in January. I hope that's one that we do get resolved in January to move Gazzaniga out the door.
Jamie, one player that it absolutely baffles me, Gedson Fernandes, limited opportunities. I know he was on the bench at the weekend against Leeds United, but hasn't had any game time, at all really under Jose Mourinho. I know when we signed Gedson Fernandes, I was at the belief of that we signed the wrong Fernandes. We should have had Bruno. That's proved to be completely correct. Gedson Fernandes, what have you made of him? And will he be going back to Benfica early in this January transfer window?
Yeah, well, one thing I would say for certain is I don't think we'll be paying the €100 million release clause that we have on him, or however crazy amount it was. I can't see that happening. And of course, it definitely won't happen. No, I think it's a situation where it's, Benfica, that's turned out disastrously for them. It's going to be very difficult for them to maybe move him on. I think, again, that they obviously put that crazy release clause in and they'll want a decent amount of money for him, but he's just not played at all. And he's, not even been in the shop window slightly. So, obviously, for me, again, it's another situation that needs to be resolved. We need to try and move him out the door. And I definitely can see him going back to Benfica this month. And, it's been a pretty disastrous that move for that, because he just hasn't produced for Spurs. It's been very disappointing. So, definitely one that I hope gets resolved.
Jamie, Jack Clark, of course, the youngster, he's gone out on loan a couple of times. Do you see him getting another loan move this January?
Yeah, look, one thing that I've really enjoyed under Jose Mourinho actually is that kind of we seem to have changed in terms of our loan policy. I think a lot of the time we kept our younger, especially under Maurizio Pochettino, we kept a lot of the younger players, and I think Walker Peters was a prime example of that. I think we kept him to kind of train with the first team, but it really stunted his development for me. I think that Walker Peters was a very talented young player, but he was kind of in a very difficult situation where he was kind of on the periphery of the first team, but he just wasn't getting any game time. And I think that really hurt him. I think Josh Onomar was a similar situation, a very talented youngster, but really got held back by a lack of opportunities. So for me, Jack Clark, I'd like to see him go out on loan. I think there was obviously reports that Jack Clark had really impressed Jose Mourinho over the summer in terms of he'd stayed behind and was working really hard. So I think he was at Leeds. He was a very talented young player as well. I think he obviously had that moment where he I think he collapsed on the bench, and he kind of struggled to get back to the same form after that. So obviously he's at a difficult stage of his career at the moment, but in terms of trying to get back to his best, but I would like to see him go out on loan. I think he does need the minutes to kind of go and develop. So yeah, I think definitely we need to look for a loan move for Jack Clark in January.
Jamie, young striker Troy Parrott, of course, is out on loan currently at Millwall. He's had very limited starts there, though, at Millwall. And surely these loan moves are all about game time. You know, getting the minutes under your belt, getting the experience.
Yeah.
You were Jose Mourinho and you were the Tottenham coaching staff. Would you recall Troy Parrott and then put him out to another club?
I think loaning him out to Millwall, I think it was quite a good opportunity to keep quite close tabs on him. Obviously, that allowed, it's a short distance for someone to go and watch him, to go and travel and see the game. So maybe that was part of the thinking. I think Championship is a good level for him at the moment in terms of developing. We saw, Harry Kane go out and play in the Championship and did very well there. So, look, I think for me, it's probably worth sticking where he is at the moment. And just hoping he gets more minutes. I think he had a difficult start as well. I think he has been kind of plagued by a couple of injuries actually at Millwall. So maybe that's to do with why he's not getting so many game times. So maybe in the new year we might see him getting more opportunities in the latter stage of the Championship. So I don't worry too much. I think that maybe it has been because of injuries that he hasn't had the minutes that we wanted him. But I think we will see him get those minutes eventually.
Jamie, one player that I'm wondering what on earth has happened to him, and that is Danny Rose. I know, in the last couple of months, I've seen match reports for the under-23s that he's been involved in under-23s. Of course, his contract is up at the end of this season. He's always said that he will always see his contract out at Spurs. It seems that is going to be the case. However, do you see him going out this January transfer window? Because surely it can't be, for someone who was a regular first team player at Spurs, a regular in the England team, and now he's gone down to the under-23s. From what I know, he's not even training with the first team. It's a disaster for him. What is going to happen with Danny Rose?
Yeah, look, I think Daniel Levy is certainly a guy who will try to get any sort of money for him this January. But yeah, I think it's just a case of where Spurs are going to have to terminate his contract if they want to get him out the door. And maybe that's the best thing to do. I just don't see anyone coming in for him in January. I just don't think it's worth it. I think he's also a player who does seem to cause quite a lot of trouble. I think the Amazon documentary wouldn't have done him any favours in terms of kind of his character. I think that was quite a big thing, that meeting with Jose Mourinho he had. I think that will put a lot of clubs off. And as I said, can't see any clubs coming in for him. I think Spurs just need to get him off their books. So I think it's just a case of paying him off that final 6 months of his contract. And yeah, it's a really, really sad end to his Spurs career because obviously he started so well with that goal against Arsenal. He had a couple of fantastic seasons for Spurs where he was one of the best left-backs in the Premier League. But this year, I mean, it's just, it's such a disappointing way to end. So I think it's just a case we just got to terminate his contract and kind of say goodbye to that one.
Jamie, one report I was really, really surprised on seeing a couple of days ago, and that is talk of replacing our goalkeeper and captain, Hugo Lloris. And then I saw the names of Sam Johnson and Dean Henderson come up that Jose Mourinho is apparently looking at to replace Hugo Lloris. And, Hugo Lloris so far this season has been in exceptional form. Are we really looking at replacing him?
Well, I mean, obviously, if a club like PSG would come in for him, and with Mauricio Pochettino there, I'm sure there might be something in that. But again, I do think that's kind of speculation. As I said, I think we'll see a lot of players from Spurs linked with PSG because of Mauricio Pochettino. And I do feel this is kind of a story that is kind of that. I think that he has been linked purely because of Pochettino. Obviously, Lloris's been fantastic this year. So, of course, we won't be looking to replace him. I think he's made a really good turnaround. I think, before that injury, it was a long time when he was quite disappointing. But since he's come back from that injury, he's looked fantastic, and looks really reassured this year. So, really been pleased with Lloris, and I don't see him leaving Spurs.
Jamie, before we come in or come on to the players that could possibly join Spurs in the January transfer window, there's two players I'd like to talk about, possible, contract renewals. Harry Kane, there is now talk about Daniel Levy wants to give him a new contract. He only signed a 6-year extension back 2 years ago. Do you see that happening? And, of course, Heung-min Son as well.
Yeah, I think both of them will happen. I'm very confident that Son will sign the new contract, and then I think Harry Kane. It's only initial contract talks at the moment, so I think that he'll want to guarantee that Spurs are going in the right direction. I think at the moment we do look like we are going in the right direction. Of course, under Jose Mourinho, we're still competing on all four fronts to win trophies, and he'll want that guarantee. I was speaking to someone earlier, and the clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona now, I just don't think they have the same attraction as they once used to. I think if you look at Barcelona, they're struggling in La Liga this year. Real Madrid, I don't think they're a club that's going to win the Champions League. I think Atletico are probably going to win the La Liga this year. So there's not a guarantee of trophies there. So it's I don't know where that dream move is for a player at the moment. I mean, maybe it's a Bayern Munich, but I don't, I can't see Harry Kane going to Bayern Munich. I don't see Bayern Munich paying the sort of fee. And of course, they've already got Lewandowski. So, it's difficult to see where he would go. But I think if Spurs can prove to him that we're on the right direction in terms of going to win trophies, then he will sign. But yeah, it's obviously positive signs that we are in talks with him over a new contract. And it would be very, very well deserved. Of course, the numbers that he's putting up this year, I think he broke the record for double digit, the shortest time to reach double digits for goals and assists, beating Fabregas's record. I think he did it in 16 matches. So, he's obviously in a fantastic season. So he'd totally deserve that. And then Heung-min Son, exactly the same. Of course, he's been sensational this season. So, both thoroughly deserving of new contracts.
Jamie, let's come on to the section where everyone's going to look forward to, possible names of who Tottenham could sign this January transfer window. Now, before we get onto the names, what positions do Tottenham really do need to strengthen to make us real title contenders?
Look, so I think the one big thing that Spurs do need is someone else to kind of contribute to the goals. I said about Son and Kane, obviously been fantastic, but Spurs have been very reliant on them. I think if a couple of games in the Premier League now where we dropped a lot of points. I think it was the last 5 games or so. That was where Harry Kane and Son weren't really involved in the game. And I don't really blame them because I think they have been really overworked this year. They've played a lot of football. So they are going to be tired and it needs for someone else to step up. So I think Spurs need someone in that can come in and contribute to those goals. I said, Harry Kane and Son have contributed to 76% of Spurs' goals this year. It's a lot of goals for those two. I mean, obviously they are in incredible form, but regardless, I do think that someone else needs to step up. So I do think that we need maybe a guy who can contribute to goals from midfield. So I'd look for an attacking midfielder. As I said earlier, I think another position that we do need to look at is a defensive midfielder. I think cover for Højbjerg is needed. And I'd still look for a top central defender. And I don't just want an option. I don't want someone that maybe could come in and be rotated. I want a top class central defender. I think that Eric Dyer and Alderweireld have done fantastically well this year. But I think Mourinho wants someone who he can really, really trust in that defence. I think that since the West Ham game, Spurs, I think we've seen the way that we've played really deep at times. And I think that's because Jose Mourinho maybe doesn't quite trust the defence. So I think if you had a really top central defender in there, we'd be able to play higher up the pitch. And that's what Jose Mourinho wants. So a top central defender is what I'd be looking for. But whether we'll get that, I'm not too sure.
Jamie, if we signed a top class defender, who's he playing alongside? Toby or Eric Dyer? Who's dropping in?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I say I want a top defender, but we do actually have two guys that are really performing this year. I think Spurs have got the second best defensive record in the league so far. I think if you look at kind of how they compare to other Premier League combinations of Spurs centre-backs, they're really high up there. So they're actually doing a really good job. But I think maybe if you look at Jose Mourinho and the way that he's treated Eric Dyer this season, I think he really, really likes Eric Dyer. I remember seeing an Instagram post he did after I think it was the Chelsea game in the League Cup. He was really full of praise of Eric Dyer, and I think he really, really likes Eric Dyer. So I think that if a central defender was to come in, he'd partner Eric Dyer. But I do think a central defender is really needed if Spurs want to achieve something big this year.
Right, Jamie. So the big question is, who are we signing, and when is it happening?
Well, I mean, look, the only question that I can definitely answer is when it will happen. And knowing Daniel Levy, it'll be the very end of the month. It'll be the 31st of January, with like a couple of minutes ago. So that's when it will happen. But I mean, in terms of names, it'd be very difficult to kind of see who we're going to sign. I mean, I've got one player in mind that I definitely want to sign, and kind of my dream signing this January would be Marcel Sabitzer from RB Leipzig. I think Spurs fans would know all about him after his Champions League exploits against us. I think against in the first leg at our stadium, he was absolutely brilliant. He ran the game, although he didn't get on the score sheet. I thought he was brilliant. And then, of course, as you were there in the stadium, Chris, he was absolutely superb in that second leg. I think he got 2 goals and was fantastic. So for me, he'd definitely be my number one choice. And I think it's a possibility. I think in the summer, he's got 1 year left on his contract, and RB Leipzig aren't offering him the kind of contract that he wants. So I think there's definitely a deal that could be done there. Whether we'll see it in January, I question whether we'll see it in January, though.
If Tottenham were to sign a player like Sabitzer, though, Jamie, who drops out? Where does he fit in?
Look, I mean, Sabitzer, I think, is kind of a unique one because he's kind of very versatile. I think he offers a number of positions. I think he's a guy that could play on the right-hand side for Spurs. So you could see, obviously, we haven't quite seen the best of Gareth Bale just yet. Whether we'll see that, who knows? But, we all obviously talked about that, the front three that we'd have. Now, maybe Marcel Sabitzer would actually come in and add to that front three of Kane and Son. I think he definitely contribute. He'd be that guy, as I said earlier, we desperately need someone else who can step up and contribute to goals. So I could see him maybe coming in to replace Bergwijn. I think actually Bergwijn, Jose Mourinho said he's obviously had a couple of problems in terms of injuries that haven't allowed him to train, and that maybe haven't allowed him to be at 100%. So I think that's a bit harsh saying that we should drop Bergwijn. But I do think, as I said, we desperately need someone else to step up and score goals. So Sabitzer for me would be that number one player to come in.
Jamie, centre-back options, what realistic options are there, and how confident are you that Tottenham will actually sign another centre-back in this window?
So, I mean, I'll be realistic. I don't think Spurs will sign a central defender. I say that because I really think we want a top draw centre-back. I don't think we want, we signed Joe Rodon, and of course, I think that was a good option. And he's obviously maybe a long-term guy in terms of we'll play him. He's got, as I said, a lot of potential, but I don't see him being quite ready just yet. So I think Spurs want a top one, and that's going to cost a lot of money. And in January, we all know, as I said, it's a difficult window. So I can't see a top draw centre-back arriving at Spurs this summer, but this January. So, unfortunately, I don't see that happening this month. But I think that's what we really, really need.
What do you think of the links of signing Sergio Ramos?
Oh, yeah, for me, look, I really, really like that one, actually. I do think, again, it's, Spurs are obviously in a direction now where we're not just looking for young, talented players. We're looking for players to go and deliver now. You've got Jose Mourinho in, and he's a manager for here and now. He's a manager to go and deliver trophies. Mauricio Pochettino, he was a project manager, but Jose Mourinho is here to win trophies. And Sergio Ramos, he's a ready-made player. We saw the impact that Thiago Silva has had at Chelsea. Maybe that's not such a good example now after a couple of their recent results. But look, he's done a very good job for them, Thiago Silva. So, bringing in an experienced centre-back like Ramos for Spurs, I think that would do a lot of good for us. Of course, he played under Jose Mourinho whilst he was at Real Madrid. So I think having that experience would be totally invaluable for Spurs. And, he's won multiple Champions League, multiple La Ligas. So I'd really like Ramos to come to Spurs. That'd be brilliant.
Would it be realistic, though, Jamie?
Yeah, I think that maybe that's the question. I think, he's obviously he is at that age now where he will have to be realistic with his wage demands. Real Madrid are obviously maybe looking to move him on, and I think they've talk of them bringing in a new central defender anyway. So I think he could potentially leave Real Madrid. I think that's definitely a possibility. And look, we're a club now that is very attractive for a lot of players. If we can get back into the Champions League, then we've got the new stadium to offer, the training facilities, Jose Mourinho, an incredible playing team to play with. So there's a lot to be attracted to Spurs. So maybe that could be a possibility in the summer. In terms, obviously, he's free to talk to new clubs now. So I think there's a possibility. I think there's definitely a slight possibility that Sergio Ramos might come to Spurs.
One centre back that we were heavily linked with, day after day in that transfer window was Milan Skriniar. Is that ever going to happen?
For me, I think that chance might have passed us by now. I always look at the Inter lineups, and he's always now included in the team. I think it was only the case of he was going to leave. I think Inter Milan were desperate to keep Milan Skriniar, and he's still fairly young, and he's a very, very good central defender. But I think it was Conte that was kind of pushing for him to leave. But now he's worked his way back into Conte's plans. He's proved he can play in a back three at Inter. So I think for Spurs, that's an opportunity that maybe is now gone. So, and again, it was a huge amount of money being quoted for him. And, there's no guarantee that he'd come to Spurs and adapt to the Premier League. And for that sort of money, I think it was a very big risk. And anyway, I think it's an opportunity that has now passed us by because he's definitely back in the Inter team.
Jamie, another Inter player, of course, Christian Eriksen left Spurs. And now, it just hasn't worked out for him. Really surprisingly, it hasn't worked out for him at all. There's been lots of rumours about Christian Eriksen possibly coming back to the Premier League. If you had the chance to sign Christian Eriksen for Spurs, would you do it?
So, I mean, you say it was a surprise, but I'm not too surprised it hasn't worked out for him at Inter Milan, because I think if you look at his last couple of months at Spurs, he wasn't the same player. I think that he's really lost a lot of confidence, and we've seen that with lots of players in the past. The example that always comes to mind is Fernando Torres, of course, a fantastic player once in his prime, but he just lost so much confidence and was never the same player. And I think maybe there's a similar situation with Christian Eriksen. So I really, really liked him as a Spurs player, but I just don't think he's the same player anymore. So, yes, we maybe do need an attacking midfielder, but Christian Eriksen for me isn't the answer, because I don't think he's quite the same player as he once was.
Jamie, striker options. Now, you said earlier about Heung-min Son and Harry Kane, playing every game. Now, Carlos Vinicius, we've signed him. He's had he's played a few times. He's played in the Europa League, but hasn't really played a lot of football in the Premier League. Now, we're again being linked to strikers, Diego Costa and Arkadiusz Milik. Arkadiusz Milik, we seem to have been linked with him as much as we were with Milan Skriniar. Neither of them got done. Do you think that we will be signing Milik from Napoli at the end of this season or in the January transfer window?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of talk about Milik, and I know when he suffered a very big injury. I think he suffered ligament damage, and he was a very talented player, and he just hasn't really been the same player for Napoli since he picked up that injury. So he's now being linked with clubs like Marseille, and I think that that's kind of his level now. I don't think he's a player that Spurs need to bring in. And one thing I have to admit, I'm a little bit fed up of Spurs bringing in these players that are kind of unproven. And, Vinicius, yes, he obviously scored a lot of goals in Portugal, but it's not the same level as the Premier League. So for me, I'd really like to go and see us maybe target someone in the Premier League. I don't want to keep seeing us trying to go for the likes of Vincent Janssen, who obviously did very well in the Dutch league, but struggled to adapt. And I think it's maybe the case with Carlos Vinicius. I think he has been slightly disappointing. I say that, I think he has been treated quite harshly because, of course, I think he scored just in the Europa League just before he was brought off by Jose Mourinho. So maybe there is a bit of harsh treatment, and maybe I am being a bit unfair on him because he's not had a lot of game time, and that's very difficult. I think that when you're not consistently in the team, it's very difficult to kind of to really play your best each week and stay motivated. So I think he is in a difficult situation, but maybe we do need to see more of him. I think, we want to see Harry Kane rested, and I think he maybe in a way does offer something, a good alternative. I think it was in the West Brom game when we won it late on. I think that although he didn't actually play a part in the goal, I think that there was, say he didn't play a part in the goal, I'm about to say he played a part in the goal. Maybe, because it was a different option coming off, and it was another handful for West Brom defenders to come and have to go and mark. So it left with Harry Kane with a bit more space. And of course, Harry Kane got the winning goal. So it shows that maybe Carlos Vinicius can offer something for Spurs. So I do think there is a case that he has been treated a bit harshly at Spurs, Vinicius.
Surely some of these games, though, Jamie, you have to be resting Harry Kane and Min Son, because, why bring players like Vinicius in if they're not going to get their opportunities?
Yeah, for sure. And look, I think Harry Kane is a player where maybe his body can't play as many games as we want him to. Yes, obviously, he'll want to stay on the pitch and always want to score goals. He'll want to score as many goals as possible. But maybe he does have to be realistic. We, of course, saw him get the big injury last year at Southampton. Then, of course, he's picked up a number of ankle issues. So, maybe we do need to kind of really look to use the backup striker and really use Carlos Vinicius. Obviously, we saw him come off the bench against Leeds. And maybe that's, we need to start doing more of that because we don't want to see, we cannot afford to lose Harry Kane, especially the way that we've been playing. And we've seen when Harry Kane's not at his top form, Spurs have really struggled, so we cannot afford to lose Harry Kane to injury. So maybe we do need to start using Vinicius a bit more.
Well, I'm going to predict, Jamie, that Vinicius will score 4 goals against Marine this weekend. And hopefully Harry Kane and Heung-min Son are at home, because we don't want to be seeing them playing in that game. Now, another striker in the last couple of days that we've been linked with is a young striker from Wigan Athletic, Carl Joseph. Do you know much about him? They're talking about £150,000 fee.
Yeah, look, I don't personally know a lot about that player, but I know obviously Wigan, they produced a lot of very talented players. I think we did sign one from them. I think it was Alfie Devine who came in, 16 years old, and he's done very, very well for our youth setup. So they've shown that they have produced a lot of very good players. I know Leeds United signed one of their young strikers. I can't quite remember his name off the top of my head, but I know that he was a very talented player. And of course, a Premier League club like Leeds were willing to snap him up. So, they've shown that they have produced a number of top players. I can't personally comment on how good he is, but maybe that would be a good option for Spurs in terms of the long future.
Jamie, one rumour as well last week, Juventus star Sami Khedira. What do you make of that one?
Yeah, again, it's kind of, he would bring a lot of experience to Spurs, and I think maybe I think that's always welcomed at Spurs. I just don't think he's maybe quite at that level that he once used to be. So for me, I would probably pass on Sami Khedira. Yes, maybe it would offer that alternative to Højbjerg, as I mentioned, but I think there's a reason why Juve are looking to offload Khedira, and it's because he's not at that same level, and I don't think he's at the level that Spurs want. So I'd probably pass on Sami Khedira.
I think it's great you haven't laughed at any of these names I've given you yet.
No, not yet. That's very true. I think the only name I've laughed at is the ones that we're keeping, the likes of Danny Rose and Jedson Van Aken. I think those are the only names that I've laughed at the moment.
Now, Jamie, we all know Jose Mourinho loves to bring in leaders. He loves to bring in experienced Premier League players. One of those that we keep being linked with is Demarai Gray of Leicester City, of course, Premier League winner. He doesn't seem to be wanted at Leicester, and the manager has said that he can go out the door. What do you make of that one?
I think Spurs have obviously wanted him for a long time, and that stems back to under Mauricio Pochettino. So we've wanted him for a long time. So maybe the club might look at that as maybe a good opportunity. Again, I think they might see him as a player who has struggled over the last couple of years, but maybe can get back to his best. It would be a free transfer, so I think the club might look at it as a very attractive kind of proposition. For me, I personally wouldn't go for it. As I said, I don't think he's the same player that he once was. And I'd much rather Spurs go for a more talented winger option if we were to go for someone else. So, I'd probably pass on Demarai Gray.
Jamie, last question for you. Honestly, hand on heart, how many players do you think that Tottenham will sign in this January transfer window? Do you think that Jose Mourinho will be doing some business? Do you think Daniel Levy has got money there for Jose to spend?
I think all transfer windows. Last summer I thought was going to be an absolute disaster at the start. I think we needed a lot of players, and it was just so quiet. So it kind of depends what happens during the month, you know, whether we can move players out, whether opportunities arise. You know, Steven Bergwijn and Jedson Fernandez weren't players that I'm sure we were planning to sign at the start of the window. So, you know, it depends just what kind of options arise. And, you know, if the right options arrive further down the line, then maybe we might bring players in. I think it does, though, heavily rely on players going out the door. And, you know, you struggle to see where we're going to get big money from. As I said, I don't think Dele Alli will move on this window. I don't think Davinson Sanchez will move on. And then you struggle to see where else we could really recoup money. So I think it'll be difficult, but I think as the month changes, we might see some, you know, that might kind of, my prediction might change. But we do really need, you know, you do think we're in a really good position here to go and win a really major trophy this year. Obviously, the Premier League is going to be very, very difficult to win. There's obviously a number of teams now competing for that. I think Europa League is definitely a competition that Spurs can go and win. You've surely got to put us as one of the favourites. So, you know, Spurs have to see this as a big opportunity to really kick on. So maybe they might look at this window and think, well, look, if we can get in a top central defender that might really aid Jose Mourinho's push for a trophy, then we'll do it. But yeah, I think, as I said, it does depend on some outgoings. So I think one will probably happen. I think I'll go for one. I can see happening.
So you do actually think that more players will go out the door than come in?
Yeah, look, we'll obviously move on the likes of Gazzaniga, Rose, but I do really hope that we just go for maybe one or two top quality players. I think that, you know, we're in, as I said, we're in such a good position here to really kick on now. So I hope the club recognise it and they maybe go and aid Jose Mourinho. As I said, that there's definitely areas in this squad where we can improve. Central defence, another maybe attacking midfielder. And Spurs could do something really, really exciting this season. So, as I said, really hope the club see that and we go and do some business in January.
Jamie, if the club did absolutely no business whatsoever in January, can Tottenham still finish in the top four?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think, you know, we are still a very, very good team. I think, you know, Harry Kane and Heung-min Son, of course, as I said, they obviously broke Alan Shearer and Chris Sutton's record for most goals combined in a season. We're only, a couple of, you know, we're still early on in the season. So with a duo like that, you're going to do something big this year. You know, top four's got to be a minimum from Spurs, especially with quality players in our team like that. Of course, you know, it's not just Harry Kane and Son with the quality. As I said, Lloris, fantastic season. Højbjerg, fantastic. Reguilon's coming and done very well. The two centre-backs are doing well. So we've got a very good team here. So I think top four is definitely a minimum and hopefully some silverware as well to go with that. That'll be very nice.
I've got a whole video without mentioning the word trophy. Can you believe it?
Oh, yes. I've just gone and read it. I do apologise.
Jamie, thank you so much for joining me today, and let's hope that you're back on the channel next week for another transfer update. Enjoy your week and come on, you Spurs.